My name is Gene Grimsley, by the way. I'm the Regional Marketing Manager for the Great Lakes region. I will be the presenter on our webinar today. It should take about an hour, maybe a minute or two more, but that's been about the time that it's taken in the previous ones. What I'm going to do is I've actually put you all in what we call broadcast mode. That effectively mutes everybody. And what it does is it really cleans up the quality of the call so you can hopefully clearly understand me better and don't have a lot of other interference. If you have questions, most of you, if not all of you, should have a chat function, if you will. Feel free to ask questions along the way. I will glance at my screen here. I've got the ability to see who's asked questions, and as I see them, hopefully, I may not do it after every slide, but often enough that we won't get too far away from our topic at hand. Excuse me. I will first of all go through a basic introduction to RPowerD. The RPowerD, we'll talk about that in a second. After we've gone through the intro, which is probably about half an hour. We'll spend the last half hour using the estimator, which is the ability to quote the product or products that are included in the RPowerD product. I think you'll find that as we go through the basics, it's pretty straightforward product, but yet it can be pretty complex. And so what I have found is that a lot of what I talk about going through the basics will become much more clear when we go through the estimator. So with that, I'm going to launch off here. Let me get started. Okay, a quick overview here is it's a non-reinsured supplemental to individual subsidized corn and soybean MPCI policies. It can be, or RPowerD can provide more revenue than the base coverage established under the Revenue Protection Plan. And by the way, you'll see that there are other plans that you can purchase RPowerD with, but I would suggest that it probably works best if you use it in conjunction with the Revenue Protection Plan that is the underlying coverage for the highest percent of policies. It will pay an indemnity when the revenue to count is less than the RPowerD trigger revenue, and this will make sense when we get a little further along here. When the revenue to count is less than the RPowerD trigger, the insured receives an amount of RPowerD payment that brings their final total crop insurance revenue up to the RPowerD trigger. And we'll go through some examples here in just a little bit. By the way, I'm not going to read everything. Just now and then it's just best that I do. You can see here I mentioned corn and soybeans already, and you can see the states that we have filed in. The states that are shown on our presentation here in black are the approved states. In other words, you could actually start selling the product in those states today. The ones that are in red we have filed but have not received approval from those states yet. And this is as of November 20th, which was on Monday, I believe, and I haven't seen any come through in the last day or so. So, well, I guess it's only one day past the 20th. Haven't seen any come through today. You'll also note on the map here shortly, there are some counties in the states that are not included, and basically those are counties where there's not enough data or in effect enough crop typically planted in total to make it the data good enough to establish good rates and so forth. There are basically the counties, state and counties, that are currently approved for RPowerD, and that doesn't mean all these states are approved yet. The ones that were in red, as I indicated before, none of those counties are approved. But when the state approves the product, then these counties which we have filed and developed rates for will be available. There's corn, there's soybeans. They look quite a bit alike. There's not there's a little bit of overlap, but for the most part, they line up the same. Basically, we're going to be talking about the products that are available within RPowerD. I think of them as being 4 different opportunities. The first one you'll see here is revenue coverage from 70% to 95% in 1% increments. And note, 95%, of course, is 10 points of additional coverage over what is available, at least on most corn and soybean counties across the United States. In other words, our 85% level of coverage is our highest level. So this allows you to buy up to 10 additional percentage coverage level revenue increments. We also have product number 1. It's called the additional price coverage, APC. Basically, it allows you to buy, or your customer to buy, in 5-cent increments up to 25 cents in addition to either the original price, projected price, get it right, and or the harvest price, whichever is the applicable price. Whereas the in revenue, let me rephrase it. I got the thing ahead of myself here a little bit. That's up to 25 cents and 5-cent increments on top of the projected price. And that ends up being the highest. The projected price would be 25 cents more. The second product is the market price option, where you can lock in yesterday's closing price. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But basically, if you like yesterday's price, yesterday's closing price on the Chicago board, this is the ability today, the following day, to buy that price if you are locked in that price for your RPowerD product. And then probably the one that most people will be looking at most seriously is the expanded price discovery period, the ability to use the settlement price average of additional months or half months. And you'll see here in just a second, it's like, well, it is the flex price product that has been in the market for a couple, 3 years, probably 3 years, similar to the MPD product that NAU has had in recent years, but it's a lot more flexible because it covers a lot more months, and we'll show you what those are here in just a little bit. Note that the sales closing date is April 1 of 2018. So you can buy the RPowerD product through April 1, 2018. Now, we are a little bit late with RPowerD into the market this year, but what you'll find is in future years, you'll be able to buy the RPowerD product starting April 1st of 2018. You'll be able to start buying the RPowerD product on the 2019 crop year. That adds up to 14 months that are actually available to do some pricing, to a better, in effect, try to achieve a better price than you might under the projected price, which is just that February average of the December contract on corn, the February average of the November contract on soybeans. Market price option, as I mentioned, lock in yesterday's closing market price on any quote up until midnight the day after the quote is generated. Okay, so today's Tuesday. We like to close with the price yesterday. I should have looked and seen what that was. We'll just say, for sake of discussion, that's $3.80 a bushel. And you think that's a price, or your customer thinks that's a price that they can lock in a profit, or at least cover their costs, whatever their objective is. We can generate a quote up until midnight tonight that locks in that market price from yesterday, the close of yesterday's market, as the price for your RPowerD product. Then you'll see that we pull in a new settlement price each night at 2 a.m. You'll also note if the quoting on a Monday afternoon, you're quoting based on the settlement price that was established on Friday afternoon. So because the weekend's involved, there's a little bit different twist. In addition to that, the producer then has until midnight on Tuesday to purchase that policy. When you go to the quoting software on Tuesday, you can either buy the quote you made on Monday with the price of Friday settlement, or you can refresh your quote on Monday and buy the Monday settlement price. So you get kind of two whacks at it when you get past the weekend on Monday and Tuesday. The rates are always current and reflect the risk represented by the quote at the time it was made. So a way I describe that is the rating methodology on the RPowerD product is more like the options market than it is like a crop insurance rating methodology. So it's in real time, and the price of the product is actually going to be cheaper the further away from the month that you select, the cheaper the cost of the RPowerD is going to be. And we'll look at some examples of that here in a little bit, and you'll see some comments in addition to that. The next feature, which would be our final feature, so we've looked at buying additional coverage level, we've looked at buying the additional price per bushel, we've looked at buying the yesterday's market price, and then the last one is the Price Flex product, which is you can buy either consecutive half and full month periods from date of approval to August of 2018, and I'll show you a chart here in just a little bit. So if approval by November 20th, we could offer you the full month of November or the last half of November in all consecutive half and full month periods to August. So obviously we're past November 20th now, so we no longer have the ability to buy a price based on the November average. We're now into the December average of that December futures contract of 2018 as our two options. We can either buy all of December, the first half of December, or the second half of December. So today was a different discussion here than we had when we did the first meeting on our webinar on Thursday, where we still had the 20th available. Just assume that November was available. If the 1 through 30 interval is chosen, we would use the daily settlement of all the market days in the month of November. The same as our revenue product. It's the November average of the December futures contract, as we indicated for corn before, and the February average of the November average of the November soybean contract. So same contracts on the Chicago board are being used for RPowerD as we use for your underlying multi-peril. We always use the settlement prices for the contract month specified in the SEP, or the contract endorsement for your underlying coverage. The deadline to select the first half of the month is the 10th. So if for December you need to select the first half of December by the 10th, you have up until the 25th of the month to purchase the full month of December or the last half of December. I'm going to glance real quick here and see if there's any questions that have come in, and I don't see it. Whoops, I do see one. Settlement price is a Chicago settlement or a local, okay? Hopefully you asked that before I noticed there, Dwayne, but the settlement price will be based on the Chicago board and does not include it is not the local price and involving the local basis, always the Chicago board. Down here a little further, okay. Okay, so here's the basically identifies all the months that are involved in the RPowerD product. Had we filed this by April of 2017, we would have been able to quote months from April of 17 all the way through August of 2018. So I said I think that totals 14 different months. So if you take the 14 full months and then 16, I believe that's 16 full months and 16 first half and 16 second half, that's basically 48 different options that were available had we started this on time. Now, when it gets to be April 1st of 2018, we'll be able to quote from April of 18 all the way through April of 19. We'll be able to quote that much time, but we'll have all 16 months available starting in April of 2018, I should say. Okay, so in simple terms, here's how it works. We've got an APH, an approved APH, to include the YATA and YE, whatever that approved APH is, becomes the yield that we use to establish coverage. However, the YATA and YE, if any one or any combination of them are used to establish the approved yield, then there's also a rate yield, and you'll see in our quoter, or the estimator, where that will have a bearing on what the cost of the insurance is. Again, as I mentioned, we can elect our coverage level from 70 to 95%. In this example, I'm going to use an 85% level of coverage. I'll mention this more than once, but I would encourage you, you can quote it different ways here, in which I'll show you how to do, but you'll find the most effective cost is when you line up the level of coverage for your RPowerD product with the level of coverage for your underlying revenue coverage policy. And I'll show you an example in the estimator, but I'll mention that more than once because I think that's a fairly important feature. Here you can see is the $393 is the high price of those three different mechanisms we have for price discovery. One being the APC, the additional price coverage. One being the market price, or based on one of the 48 intervals that might have been available, or now from December on through August, if whichever one you selected. So that results in coverage of $641. So this slide looks a little bit imposing initially, but what you can see here is, first of all, I'm going to look at the right-hand side. Those are the intervals that are available. There's your 16 full month, your 16 half months, first half, and then the additional, the 16 last half. So those are the options that you have available as far as the intervals you might want to select. Now up here, your first is your additional price coverage. It turned out to be $4.18. That was the $393 plus the 25 cents, or $4.18. The ability to lock in a current market price, I don't know when that date was, but there was a date where we saw a price, $4.23 to be exact in this example, that we liked. So we locked in that $4.23 price under the market price option of the RPowerD. And as you can see, when we look at the intervals that we selected, June, July full month, and then March through July full month. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different intervals were selected here. And the month of, it looks like June or July, either one, they end up being the same. But that produced the highest interval. So when you look at the three, the 418, that's the projected price plus the 25 cents, or the 423A market price that was available, during the time that we could select that price, and then the highest interval was 420. So 423 becomes the price that we'll use to establish our coverage, because that's the highest price of the prices that were available in all the options that were available in the RPowerD product. So we'll come over here to the next slide, and we'll look at the 192 bushel yield times our 95% coverage level. You can see the RP's obviously got to be between 50 and 85. If you look down here, it's 85%. Our bushel guarantee, that'd be 95% of 192 is 182 times the highest price at 423 results in our RPowerD coverage, our revenue trigger of $772. That's based on the 95% level. The cost of that product was $58, so our net revenue trigger is $714. Basically, it costs $58 to lock in that kind of guaranteed revenue. If we come down and look at the revenue protection, the 192 times 85% equals 163 guaranteed bushel, 393 projected price of $641 in coverage. So you can see that premium's quite a bit cheaper because it's just the RPowerD for one, and it's at 85%, not RPowerD, excuse me, the revenue protection at 85%. The premium's 14, so you've got net revenue trigger of $627 or $86 additional revenue guaranteed under your RPowerD product in conjunction with your revenue policy. Before I move on, I'm going to see if we have any questions pending out there. Sorry to be a little behind. If corn is insured as grain, can RPowerD be sold for all the other different uses of corn? And the answer is no. We only insure corn planted for grain. So the other different types of corn that might be available would not be insurable, only the corn planted for grain. Okay, did I skip the slide? I don't think I did, no. Okay, some policy requirements. Must purchase MPCI to demonstrate an insurable interest in the crop, but need only to buy the underlying coverage, but does not need to buy the underlying coverage from the same AIP. A comment I'd make there, and obviously I'm promoting our own cause here, but I can tell you from experience with past products where we had a standalone product with one company and the underlying coverage with another company, it was not the best experience in many cases at claims time. Basically, your competitor is, one of our competitors is who we have to get the documents from, and they know they've got this underlying coverage. They don't like, don't like to be as responsive as maybe they might. So we've had issues there. I just think it's the best service to provide your underlying coverage and your RPowerD the same. I've had a couple of questions come in. If it is insured grain but harvest for silage, is it still insurable under RPowerD? Then the answer is yes, because it's insured as grain. We'd have to appraise it before he cuts it for silage to determine the production account. But if it's planted for grain and insured as grain, then it is insurable. It can be insurable under RPowerD. Okay, underlying policy requirement. I guess I already talked about that. RPowerD coverage does not attach if evidence of qualified MPCI insurance is not provided to the AIP. And I understand at the agency level, you can control a lot of that. Okay, if the underlying policy is not written within a EU country, then you can see the information that we need, policy confirmation, schedule of insurance, and then at loss time, of course, a notice of loss and proper documentation for the claim to be adjusted. That's pretty straightforward. The program design will estimate revenue to count revenue policy indemnity by practice at the enterprise unit level. So I'm going to say this a little bit differently. The RPowerD will be done on an enterprise unit basis, as you can see right there. And when we do the loss, we'll take the information from the underlying coverage and adjust it like it's an enterprise unit. However, they can buy the different unit structure on their RP, and their RP payment will be based on their unit structure here, or payments if there are multiple units that would get paid. We're just going to use the information on enterprise unit basis to determine what what value to count against the RPowerD guaranteed RPowerD guaranteed revenue. Coverage will most commonly be written as revenue protection. I talked about that earlier. The indemnities do not interact with MPCI indemnities. Yes, we use the enterprise unit value, if you will, of the indemnities to count against the guaranteed revenue on the RPowerD, but it does not interact in any other way. So it can be possible for you to have either an MP claim or an RPowerD indemnity or both. So, all the combinations applied there. I think that makes it 6 different ways that can happen, but we treat them independent and then go from there. The RPowerD policy has no impact on the liability or indemnity of the federally reinsured our MPCI coverage, just to restate that again. Okay, here's a unique feature of this product. It's called a liability adjustment factor. I think this will be better illustrated when we do the estimator, but just to explain what it is, on 10% percentage increments, you can select 30, 40, 50, and so forth of the liability, and it will reduce the coverage and the premium by that percentage. So let's just say, for sake of discussion, I got $100 worth of coverage and the premium was $10. If I took a 50% liability adjustment factor, you select that, and you'll see it when you do the estimator, your premium would only be $5, but your coverage would only be $50. So it reduces both the liability and premium proportionately. And again, it's a selection you'll make when you're going through the estimator. The maximum price movement is another value that you can choose. Again, it'll be the highest alternative market price, the interval price, and also to include the fixed payment price. So corn is from 10 cents to $1 in 10-cent increments, and soybeans 20 cents to $2 increment. Again, the estimator will probably show that better than I can explain it. So that's the maximum price movement on corn, maximum price movement on soybeans, $1 and $2 respectively. If the highest alternative market price does not exceed the projected price and the harvest price, no loss payment is due under this policy. So that's true with other price products. If either the projected or the harvest price is the highest price of the year, then there would be no payment under the RPowerD product, as there isn't in PriceFlex, as there wasn't in MPD. Unless otherwise stated in the policy and underwriting rules, The terms and conditions established by the MPCI policy will also apply to the RPowerD policy. Acreage reports, dates, APH dates, all those are the same, unless there are some underwriting terms that would be different. And you'll find most of the things that would fall into this category are actually accomplished when they're doing the premium estimation tool or using the premium estimation tool. Here you can see the insured must report all acreage report in the county in which they have a share by crop type and practice. Acres not insurable is prevented planting claim, or prevented planting acreage would be a better way to say that. Acres insured as silage type corn, designated as high risk, written under a written agreement, and otherwise not insurable under the terms of under the underlying policy. Take a quick glance here on questions. Got 125 people on, so takes a second to scroll through. Looks good for now. Okay, intended acres must come in with the application. You can also see that we have a rule similar to PriceFlex and other pricing products that the intended acres reported on the application cannot exceed 110% of those intended acres. There will be a limit applied via an overplant factor, so you can see basically that 10%. And the way it works is we intended 400, planted 450, 110% of 400 is 440. So we've got 10 acres there we've got to account for, and we do that by dividing 450 or 440 by 450 and end up with a factor of 0.9778. That factor will be applied to the indemnity. So in other words, we compute an indemnity based on the 450 acres and then factor that indemnity by this factor to make the final payment on the RPowerD product. It's similar, as I said, to other products. I kind of look at this in two ways. I just explained it one way. You might think of it also as I have full coverage on 440 acres. I just don't have that extra 10 acres insured. But we're doing that using the 450 production and factoring it back to the 440. Okay, you also note that 10 acres cannot exceed the largest number of gross planted acres in the county in which you have had a share during the 4 previous crop years. If you have added land that exceeds this limit, proof must be submitted with the application. So we'll work with you on a case basis in that case, and we can make an exceptions. But with things being, without added land, this number right here, or this rule right here applies. Okay, now I'm going to try to keep this simple. This is actually another feature of the RPowerD product. It's the opportunity to consider the ARC County payment. That's the FSA program that was part of the Farm Bill that passed, 5 years ago or whenever it was, 4 years ago, coming into our 5th year. Right now, what you're going to find is that there's basically, you can either opt in to this ARC County payment or you can opt out of this ARC County payment. And what this does is it allows you to, if there's a projected ARC County payment, based on the timelines which I'll get to here in a second, that payment will be also a value that reduces your RPowerD payment. So in effect, you're getting that ARC County payment, but since you've got that kind of coverage there, it's sort of, the philosophy is you don't need a second ARC County payment, so you can reduce your RPowerD payment by that projected amount if you opt in, and you will get a reduction in your premium. And we'll look at some examples of this. I think it'll better explain it. You'll get a reduction in your premium, which might make it, the overall product a little bit more doable on the cost side. If you opt out, you will be paying the full premium, or it'll be more than if you opt in, but you'll also get the full RPowerD payment. One might say, if you are pretty confident there's not going to be an ARC County payment, taking the discount by opting in, might be a good strategy, but you're projecting something you don't know the answer to, so I'm not sure I'd do that. You'll note now that this does default to the opt-out election, and you'll see that when we get in. Now, the program payment estimate is made independent of the FSA. It's made by Watson Associates, who developed the RPowerD program. It's based on the FSA rules. And if you look at the other thing that opting in does, it reduces your premium, but reduces your RPowerD payment, but it also extends your payment out till May of 2019. Whereas if we had our loss data all put together and so forth in, we'll say November or December, like we would this year, we could go ahead and make the RPowerD payment at the same time as we do the underlying revenue policy payment, and obviously get your money. I think that's 5 months, 5-6 months in advance, or not so much in advance, but earlier than if you opt in. So you can opt in, save some money, reduces your payment, likewise, but then also it delays your payment a bit. Remember too that the final value of the ARC County payment is based on 85% of the base acres. You can see it's the ratio of the base acres divided by the intended acres. And then you can also see here that you can exercise the historical irrigation percentage and insure your irrigated acreage on RPowerD different than you do your non-irrigated acres. So it's similar to the enterprise unit option you have available on your underlying coverage. Irrigated, non-irrigated can be insured at different levels. So that's a good feature to the product. Just to show you kind of how it works, you've got the elected base acres. That's from the FSA. The intended total acres is 200. The actual insured acres is 210. We're going to take the 100 elected acres or base acres divided into your intended acres, and that's a 0.5 factor, and that will be applied to this ARC County payment. It's all a function of that payment. Again, that's something the Watts will do. Back to that ARC County payment just a second. I should have mentioned the reason Watts can project that payment, the NAS data, like our area risk plans, is determined, is released by NAS, actually probably in February, but the RMA signs off on it as approved around the 1st of April. So then we have the information necessary to compute the ARC County payment, although remember that the price side of that is a monthly average price, which is based on weighted acres, and by the time you get to April, about 90% of the grain is already marketed at that point, so they have 90% of the information in to make a good determination as to what that ARC County payment is going to be made at that time, and that becomes the basis for the reduction on your RPowerD payment. Okay, a quick example of all what I've been talking about here. I'm going to talk about planted acres. We've got 80 base acres, so our ratio there is 80%. You've got your ARC County Olympic average yield, so that's the program yield that they use for ARC County at 136. you can see that the NAS April yield that's released in this example is 130. You can see that the Ark County Olympic average is 395. But you can also see that the April marketing year average ends up being 340. So you can see it's lower than the average established their payment. But 340 is the reason they might have a payment. And so when you do the math there, that's 1359 Ark County payment. Again, it's an estimate, but it's going to be the number that they use to determine the RPowerD payment. Here's an actual yield of 104.9. The harvest yield ends up at 385. Our revenue to count, just doing the math there, is 403.87. That's in effect your multi-peril, your revenue policy payment. RP at 85% level is, I say payment, it's your revenue to count for your RP payment. Here's your guaranteed dollars at 497. Subtract one from the other, you get 93.56 is your RP indemnity. We then go all the way back to what our trigger yield was at 606.48 minus the 93.56 indemnity. That's from your RP policy. So that leaves 403 to count, then minus your 1359 Ark County payment, assuming you elected that, and we selected a 100% liability adjustment factor to get a payment of $95.40. This might be a good time to see if there are any questions on the question board here, or the attendance board. So far, so good. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Once a policy is purchased, the following are locked in. The intended acres become the acres. The share is obviously the share, the price movement limit. That's it, whether it be 50 cents, 60 cents, whatever, up to, it's actually 10 cents all the way up to $1, I believe, on corn, 20 cents to $2 on soybeans. Liability adjustment factor, those are all locked in when you make your application. The components that can change up till April 1. In other words, you can go back in and add additional price coverage. You can go, in other words, you can change it from 20 to 25. That 20, that last 5 cents is going to cost more proportionally than the first 20 did because you're buying it later. You can add intervals, and they too will be more expensive than had if you purchased them earlier. Or you can buy a new higher market price. In other words, if that market price spikes up somewhere along the way, you can go back in and take another price. Obviously, each time you go in and make changes, there's going to be premium consideration when you do so, or when your customer does so. Sales begin in 2017 for the 18 crop year. I mentioned that already, April 1 of 2018, you'll be able to start selling again. It's also the sales closing date for the 2018 crop year. I probably didn't say that right. 2018 completes 1 year and starts another year. There is a net 25 acres minimum per policy. The premium will be paid on premium will be billed on October 1st. Must be paid within 30 days. It's an annual policy, so you will need to make application again next year. And that's even more true on price products because the market's changed this year versus last year. Quoting keys, the 90 and 95% coverage levels, as you might expect, will be expensive. It's less deductible, means more cost. It's, as I mentioned before, most cost effective to maximize your underlying policy coverage. In other words, if you're thinking between 80 and 85 versus on your underlying coverage versus 80 and adding some RPowerD, it's probably go to 85 first and then decide what additional coverage you might need, because obviously with subsidy, it's a more effective use of the premium dollars probably. Quotes do change daily. It's most cost effective to choose desired alternative pricing intervals at one time. So in other words, the example I did way back when, there were 7 different months selected. 7 months is going to be cheaper on a per month basis than if you do just 1 month. So there's some, so to speak, volume discount or multi-interval, a slight adjustment in the cost, by buying multiple intervals. The point I think there is it's better to think about the intervals and do them early and all at the same time. It's going to be more cost effective. Now, I understand that the markets change, and as they change, you might decide it's time to go in and look at another option, and at that point you might make another selection. Selecting the additional price coverage well ahead of the projected price averaging period will again be less expensive. The sooner you do things in RPowerD, the better the pricing is going to be. As I mentioned, selecting an additional price coverage of 0 and no market price or intervals will result in the underlying projected price being used. In other words, if you just want to buy up to 90 or 95% level of coverage, that is an option. You don't need to do any of these pricing mechanisms. You can just simply buy additional coverage with your RPowerD to enhance your revenue policy. The RPowerD revenue protection coverages from 70 to 75. I've mentioned that once. As I mentioned, it's market price, intervals, and additional price, to add to the projected price. Okay, what's next? Gain access to the Agent eVantage system for testing. That is one thing you'll need to do is pass a test. It's a 20-question test. We have covered everything in this presentation that's on the test. There's also, and I'll show you when I go into the estimator, there's actually a training module available when you go online, and that can be utilized to either learn or to it's like an open book test, if you will. They have your user ID and password. You'll need to work with our marketing rep or the call center to get that username and password. Once your state is open for sales and the test is passed, you'll get access to the eVantage system so you can quote and make application. The application will be done on the quoting tool. Signed applications are due in the branch office 10 days of purchase. In other words, you'll do all your quoting and do the fill the application on the estimator, but then you'll need to provide that application, signed application, I might add, to your underwriter. And then the next few slides here, I'm going to go through the login. You can see here that this is the web address, agentevantage.com. When you go in the first time, you'll want to put in your last name and first name, all caps, in that order, I might add. In the password, you'll put your first initial, exclamation point, @ the last name with the first letter capitalized, and then 2017. So here's what it would look like if your name were John Smith. John.Smith is the username, password, J, exclamation point, @ Smith 2017, and that'll log you in, at which point it'll prompt you to change your password. I got a couple questions here. If already approved by Watson Associates, do you still need to do the test? And the answer is, if you've taken the test with another company, and there are other companies that will have RPowerD, to my knowledge, there are 3 other ones. Our understanding is, at least at this point in time, you'll need to go in and take the test again. In other words, you'll need to do it for NAU just like you did for the other companies. Okay, so now I've logged on. I haven't yet, but I will shortly. Again, you'll see the certify is where you start the process. So I'll go to, it'll bring you in. It'll have you change the password. I can't even talk. And you can see the RPowerD testing. By the way, when you go in and do the estimator, use the estimator, I should say, to actually do the test, and I'll go forward here. You can see, whoops, I think it says somewhere, you must log out totally of the estimator and back in once you've passed the test with your new password, and that will allow you to then get into the estimator. If you try to go directly from the test to the estimator, it won't work. I am living proof of that because I tried to do that. After passing the exam and logging back in, access the real-time estimator by clicking the estimator. You can see RPowerD is the product we'll be doing now. And you'll see, well, I'll go back here. You can see here it's got, you know, an out arrow there. It's going to identify the other companies that you are registered with. So if you're registered with more than just NAU, it'll show more than NAU, and you'll select, of course, NAU to do your quoting, please. Then here you can see after logging in, you can change your password by clicking on your name in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. I probably indicated you could change your password ahead of that, and I think you can by going into the information tab. We'll look and see if that isn't true when we actually get in. Then you'll see that once you're in, you can change your password, provide all the other information specific to you and your agency. And then you can see here in our Easy Quote program, this is a NAU Easy Quote product. If you go into the quoting tool, and you'll see on the top row initially an edit function. Hit edit and you'll see preferences as one of your options. Select preferences. When you do that, go down to reports, select that, and then select the weighted average yield. Let's see what the next screen is. And what this weighted average yield does, it takes, and first of all, I think I need to go back probably one slide, two slides. Yeah, second was there, another version, I had it. But basically you'll select a policy in our Easy Quote program, just like you do. It'll have, if it's an existing policy I'm talking about, pick that policy and go through this process. I'll go through it one more time. Hit edit, go to preferences, hit reports, go to weighted average yield. And what that'll do is, for on a crop practice basis, it will establish the weighted average yield for all the units or all your databases, if you will, so that the yield that you're using on the estimator will be a yield that most accurately represents the policy that you're quoting. If you try to, there is a functionality in the estimator that allows you to put in yields, but if you do it, as we all have so many times, as you look at 3 or 4 units and, you know, one's at 140, one's at 150, one's at 160, one's at 170, and you decide it's about a 165 average, and because you kind of know it's weighted, but this gives you a true weighted average yield and can be utilized in the quoting tool in a very effective way. Oh, I guess here, I got ahead of myself. The way you find the policy is go to the open, you know, and then put in that policy number, and that's going to bring up the policies, and you can see this average roll-up. You can select that on this policy, and you can see there it's going to have a rate yield for that policy on corn and an approved weighted average yield for that policy on corn. It's a great function. I would encourage you to use it.